I did watch NXT Vengeance Day last night, but first, we got to take it back to earlier in the week because there were 3 names, all of whom are likely WWE bound. One of them is already on NXT television, so we already know one of them is in WWE. But 3 names that Tony Khan released from their contracts. Malakai Black is one of those people. He is no longer with AEW. And there was talk of his deal not being up originally until 2027. Because that came from Tony Khan many years ago when he said, oh, I've got Malakai and Adam Cole locked up until 2027. Well, if he did, he doesn't anymore. Obviously, Malakai was able to negotiate a quicker exit because he's gone. Miro is also gone from AEW. And per PW Insider, we are told Miro and AEW mutually parted ways, setting the stage for his exit from the company. There was talk that he had asked for his release back in the fall of 2024. The 2 sides had been working towards an agreement for some time. And they also mentioned that Miro has signed with Paradigm for representation in all areas of Hollywood. As have many WWE stars, by the way. Damian Priest and CM Punk, Tiffany Stratton, Drew McIntyre, Liv Morgan. I think Jade Cargill, they're all represented now by Paradigm, which is one of the top Hollywood agencies. So you could add Miro to that list. And Ricky Starks was given his release from AEW months before his contract was due to expire. So all those free Ricky hashtags, Ricky has been freed. And it didn't take very long, all of 24 hours, for him to show up on WWE television. Because right in the middle of Tuesday's NXT show, there he was, coming through the crowd with a microphone in his hand. They never identified him by name, but they spoke like they all knew who he was. And he cut a promo saying that if NXT is the future of professional wrestling, then it needs a true superstar of the future. Everyone's been begging the question, when will the revolution be televised again? He said, I'm here, ain't I? And then last night at Vengeance Day, he wasn't there live, but they aired a pre-tape promo where he said he would be signing his NXT contract this Tuesday. And again, he nor the announcers made any mention of his name. And people are freaking out over them not mentioning his name. You know, they're not going to let him use it, and they're going to saddle him with one of these terrible fucking names they just trademarked last week. It's quite the list, by the way, if you haven't seen this list of names. We have... I don't know if it's Osiris or Osiris. I'll say Osiris. Osiris Griffin is one name that they trademarked. Hayes Jameson. I've been in a few hazes after drinking Jameson in my day. Trill London. Harley Riggins. Draco Knox. I think this one may be my favorite. Braxton Cole. Like they just fused Michael Cole together with Kayla Braxton. There's a Photoshop for you. So anyway, you had people worried that Ricky Starks was going to be Trill London or some such thing, not realizing they literally rushed him onto TV. Like, he got out of his contract on Monday, and he was on television by Tuesday. Okay, and while I'm sure they had some sense that eventually he was going to leave and they were going to be able to bring him in, they could not legally do anything until he was free. So on 24 hours notice, I doubt they went through all the proper legal channels to license the man's name from him, because that is his name. So he can absolutely use it. See what I did there? But I would imagine the company has to go through a process to license it from him if they want to use it on TV, if they want to use it on merch. I would not have a panic attack just yet about the name. This all happened very quickly. You know, Ethan Page, he left AEW and he came to NXT as Ethan Page. Shawn Spears left AEW and he came to NXT as Shawn Spears. There is no reason that Ricky Starks cannot be Ricky Starks. Now, I don't know why Tony Khan decided now was the right time to release them all in a bunch like this, but I'm glad he did. Rey Fenix is still under contract, but Chris Featherstone, I saw, of Sportskeeda, says that negotiations between Fenix and Tony Khan to end Fenix's tenure with the company are progressing, and a resolution is expected to happen soon. And he says he was also informed that Tony Khan has been heavily advised to put an end to this soon regarding Fenix's holding period. I'm not sure who's advising him, but remember those tweets that Rey Fenix put out and quickly deleted, talking about inhumane treatment, right? We didn't know what he meant by that. if there's a there with some of the things that he was tweeting about, and he's got some stories to tell, then yes, maybe it is in Tony Khan's best interest to put an end to this soon. I'm sure with a nice NDA to go with it. But, if he let the other three go, there's really no reason for him to hold on to Fenix if he's not going to use him. And that's the case with any of these guys, and that's been my whole thing this entire time. I understand not wanting to set a precedent where anyone who's unhappy and who's under contract can just go to you and say, hey, you know what? I'm not happy. I want to leave. And they end up going to WWE. But if he's not going to use them, then work something out where they can leave, and maybe they can work anywhere but WWE for a period of time, right? If they really want out that badly, if it's not just, hey, I want to leave so I can go work for Mr. Levesque over there, then maybe work it out in that way, right? If they're that adamant about leaving. But there's just no point in paying these people just to let them sit home and do nothing. Or just work indies, right? It's just wasteful spending. Starks was clearly going to go to WWE. And I think starting on NXT is actually the right move, right? If they were going to hold off on this debut for later in the spring or in the summer, I think I might feel differently about it. But you bring this guy in 2 months before WrestleMania, where he is not going to be factored into any major WrestleMania plans. You know what? It's better to start him off on the brand where he could be a top guy right out of the gate. Instantly, Ricky Starks is a top star in NXT. That wouldn't be the case if he debuted on Raw. That wouldn't be the case if he debuted on SmackDown. Anyone who's not familiar with who he is going to become familiar very quickly, and a run on top would do him a lot of good for when he finally does get called up. Plus, let's be honest here, the NXT men's division could use someone like him right now, okay? Because they could definitely use the help on the men's side. Malakai, I've talked about him a lot already. He started out with a lot of promise and then just got stuck in tags and trios for a lot of his run there, when there was still money to be made with him as a single star. He was clearly frustrated at various points of his run. He even asked for his release at one point. He got denied. Right? There's no need for him to start with NXT. Triple H just needs to do what he did with him on NXT on the main roster, and I think he will do well. Someone like him could work on his own. Someone like him could work as the new leader of the Judgment Day and replacing Finn Balor. And then he could even feud with Balor. Someone on the SmackDown stream the other night suggested a Cody Rhodes-like debut for him at WrestleMania, where he returns as the mystery opponent for someone who ends up not having an opponent, like a Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is going to have an opponent, but I could see something like that. I don't know who you would put him in the ring with, but I could see something like that. Or just hold off on his return for the week after WrestleMania. You don't have to give everything away before WrestleMania. And then there's Miro, who has not wrestled a match for AEW since a win over Andrade at World's End in 2023. Then he was injured after that. Then he got divorced. I think he moved back to Bulgaria for a time. So he went through some shit personally. But that does not explain why in 2023 he only worked 7 matches, all of which were either on Collision or on pay-per-view. There were 2 of them on pay-per-view. He hasn't worked a match on Dynamite in 3 years. 3 years! He hasn't wrestled a single match on their flagship show. His only singles losses in 5 years working for Tony Khan were to Sammy Guevara when he lost the TNT title, and to Bryan Danielson. That was in the finals of an Eliminator tournament at Full Gear. And you know when that was? That was in 2021. That was the last time Miro lost a match, if you don't count the 4-way that he was a part of at that first Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Like, these numbers and these stats are insane, especially for someone who you would not consider a top guy on the level of a Roman Reigns or a John Cena, or in AEW terms, a Kenny Omega or a Jon Moxley. Right? He was not at that level of stardom, but he seems to have had a lot of say in how he was booked. And that was one of the raps on him over the years, is that the company would pitch ideas to him and he would turn them down. Right? It's not that they didn't want to use him, but whenever they did, he didn't like what was being presented to him, and so it just never worked out. Right? There was a report, now it was from Dave, but a few years ago there was a report in The Observer that Miro was going to lose a battle royal It would come down to him and Hangman Page, and he was going to lose the Battle Royal. And supposedly he refused the idea. He didn't want to lose. And then his wife at the time, CJ Perry, was doing an interview somewhere and said that Rusev Day would be back in WWE one day. Everyone returns to WWE at some point. That's what she said. Which I could understand Tony Khan hearing that, even though it was his wife and not him who said it. Right? They were husband and wife, and your wife is out there publicly saying, yeah, everybody goes back to WWE. He'll be back there one day. I could see that not sitting well with his current employer. Now, that's one side of the story about him rejecting creative pitches. One day, Miro will say his piece, and he may deny it, or he may have a different version of what happened. But his entire run from start to finish was just weird. And I don't think all of that can be laid at Tony Khan's doorstep. I think there's blame to go around on why Miro's run in AEW failed. Right? His Redeemer character was really good. But when you look at his run from start to finish in this company, I don't see how you can classify it as anything other than a failure. The Redeemer character, I would love to see some adaptation of that in WWE if he goes back. There's talk of maybe Lana even rejoining him if he goes back. I guess they must be on good terms, even though they're no longer husband and wife, if they want to work together. Meltzer says those close to Miro say that he was constantly pitching ideas to AEW for the both of them, and they never went anywhere. And then when AEW let her go, that was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and it led to him asking for his release. Obviously, he didn't want to be there anymore. I've always said, if he really wanted to work, if he wanted to work that badly, he would have been back on TV. If he wanted to work, he would have had more than 7 matches in 2023. Or if he wasn't going to be on AEW television because there were creative differences, right? I'm sure he had the right to go out there and book his own independent dates, right? We didn't see him working indies. He just wasn't working, right? Not wrestling matches. If he wanted to work, he would have been back on TV in 2024. Miro did not want to be there. Ricky Starks did not want to be there. Rey Fenix does not want to be there. So how long do you drag this out and pay them when you're not getting any return on your investment? It's best to just part ways and make room for other free agents. Someone like Josh Alexander, for example, who, according to Fightful, is expected to sign with AEW if he has not already done so. He enlisted the help of super agent Barry Bloom to represent him in contract negotiations, which should have been a sign right there that he was looking to get paid, number one. And number two, Barry Bloom has represented a whole bunch of AEW names: Chris Jericho, Will Ospreay, the Young Bucks. I saw Jordan Grace tweeted, see you soon at Alexander after he finished up with TNA on Friday, but it looks like AEW is going to be his landing spot. And he's super talented, but I actually think AEW is the better destination for him. I do. I don't know if he still wants the ability to work indies. I think he just wrapped up his indie commitments and sounded like he was pretty much done with it all. But maybe he wants to work New Japan, or maybe he just wants to get paid. And Tony Khan was willing to pay him more than what WWE would have been willing to pay him for an NXT deal, which is where he would have ended up had he gone there. He would have done well in NXT on the main roster. I don't think he would have been nearly as big as he was in TNA. In AEW, I actually feel like he has a better shot. I may eat those words, but that's how I feel.